All right, so this is going to be kind of a free-form conversation about Bernie or bust, because I'm not Bernie or bust, but I really understand why some people are. And I'm sick of this group of the electorate being tormented for being ideologically, strong-willed and not wanting to conform to a system that over the last 40 years has been proven to fail them. And in the past couple of days, the media has gotten violent, and it's been disgusting. And not just Fox News, but we have the media that's supposed to be on the left doing things that are supposed to be reserved to Fox News. Chris Matthews said Bernie Sanders will lead to executions in Central Park, as if he is some type of authoritarian dictator. Now, when you talk about socialism, when you talk about capitalism, when you talk about any failed state, the issue is not left or right. It's authoritarianism and libertarianism. Bernie Sanders is 70% libertarian. Gary Johnson, libertarian, presidential candidate 2016, said that. Everything he does is meant for freedom. You might not agree with the type of freedom Bernie wants to portray, but it is meant for freedom. Chris Matthews saying that is Fox News-ish. He sounds drunk on air. He's not using any facts. He's ignorant. He ignores everything he sees in front of him. It's cognitive dissonance. Chuck Todd comparing Bernie supporters just today, I think, to brown shirts. So that's synonymous with fascism. Hitler, Mussolini, saying that they are a cult, saying that they are these disgusting internet trolls, the story the media is running with. And I'll tell you, I went to a Bernie Sanders organizing event about a year ago, Central Pennsylvania. And the people that showed up were not people who were online. These were older people, a couple younger, and they all had one common element to them. And that common element was a struggle. Was a common struggle for healthcare, for housing, for a decent life. Like people who were holding off on having kids because they couldn't afford their bills after going to college for 7 years to become medical professionals. Couldn't afford that. And the policies like Sanders is talking about is easily verifiable as proven to work policies. Like when you talk about universal health care, when you talk about free college tuition, free trade schools, a society that puts their tax dollars into helping their people. I don't want to hear any dissenting arguments. I don't want to hear arguments without fact. And the only way to use an argument with fact in that situation is to first note that every other country in the world does these policies. So we go through a process. Are we the richest country in the world and most powerful? Yes. Do other countries who are less rich and less powerful, do they pull off these policies? Yes. Can we do it? Apparently no. And apparently if you think we can, if you think we're radical enough to have a society that puts our collective well-being before a profit motive, things like healthcare, things like for-profit prisons that should not be for-profit. If you think that's radical and you can't bring up facts around the world on how these countries make it work, we have no discussion to be had. This is how you help radicalize people, is lying about these things. The news media ignores basic facts. And there's one overlying thing in this whole entire conversation about Bernie supporters. These are not typical Democratic supporters. These are not Democratic voters. These are not people that come around every 4 years and blindly follow whoever the Democratic nominee is. These are people who are in the party, who are in the primary system. They're here for Bernie. They're here for these progressive policies. Policies they see all around the world working. They're here for that. They weren't Democrats. The Democrats that do support Bernie, that were always like those Democrats, did vote for Clinton. And we know it's a fact that more Bernie supporters supported Clinton than Hillary supporters did Obama in 2008. So that argument is completely mute. Completely mute. It's a terrible argument. It's not true. And MSNBC labeling Bernie supporters as all white kids online. When Bernie Sanders in Iowa, and that's a whole nother story, but in Iowa, he won 45% of the non-white vote. Nationally, he's leading the non-white vote in every single poll. He has been. MSNBC today said, well, Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders both have an issue with people of color, effectively negating the supporters of Bernie Sanders, saying they aren't real. The Bernie bro term erasing every woman that supports Bernie who has been a feminist his whole life. Like these terms they're using are so backwards. We know they're just here to try to manipulate people. We know these media companies are verifiably telling lies. And that's why Donald Trump's method works. I hope you know that. Donald Trump, like Andrew Yang is completely right. The system we already had in place is what gave birth to Donald Trump. The media might not be as egregious as Donald Trump says, but they do lie. And all they need to do is lie a little bit. All they need to do is lie. Well, it's a lot now. It's been a lot, but whatever. All they need to do is lie to a normal extent. And Donald Trump can take that and turn it into a radical thing. Because when we try to say, oh no, the media doesn't lie, what basis do we have? The media has a far lower approval rating or favorability rating than Donald Trump. And that's another terrible argument. Like the media, this clickbait culture, the for-profit culture put Donald Trump in office. And they're working as an extension of these big establishment branches. We know CNN and the DNC and like the Clinton campaign all coordinate stories. We know there's truth to this. We know this happens. It's 100% true. We have the information. So Bernie or bust. Remember, they're not Democrats. They aren't voting for us. They aren't going to vote for Democrats because they're not Democrats. They're here because this is the only close thing to a left party they have. Third parties are all shut out of the process here. Two parties, our two parties, Republicans and Democrats, are both huge corporations that are working in their own interests. And people just don't want to conform to it. And the policies we get from the left party are right-wing in other countries. Like Barack Obama. He ran as a populist, said he was going to fight for the working class, said he was going to end endless wars, ended up increasing drone strikes by 400% from George Bush. The Wall Street bailout, he decided to bail out the banks instead of bailing out the middle class. He ran on a anti-corporate, stance, but he actually collected the most money of any Democratic candidate in history from Wall Street and people that are in the stock market. And then once he got that money, he got into office and he stocked his cabinet, his whole entire White House, with people from banks, from the stock markets, from friggin', stock traders, from all his advisors were, people who paid him. So that's why there's a distrust in the system. There's been a long shift in our country to the right and over the past 40 years. And somehow the Democrats keep going more and more right because they have to meet the Republicans in the middle, apparently. We have to keep meeting them in the middle. We have to keep on conceding more and more ground. And I don't know why it's such a crazy concept to think that if we keep on going right, if we keep on getting pulled right for 40 years, 50 years, that we're going to end up with a fascist, an authoritarian fascist, right wing in Donald Trump. Where do you think this is going to go? And now they want the party to go as far right as billionaire Michael Bloomberg. By the way, Michael Bloomberg, worth $60 billion. So far, in about 9 to 10 weeks, there's an ad on the screen right now. My picture might be over it. But so far, he spent over $400 million of his own money. And the media is fetishizing it. Do you know what that essentially means if he's spending that much money? Any voters he gains is a product of that money. Because when you're spending that money, you are essentially controlling everything people see and hear and interact with. You are the gatekeeper of information. Already, our communications are controlled by 5 major media companies. Huge corporations. And they're the gatekeepers for information, and Michael Bloomberg, with that money, is controlling everything people can see and hear. And that is absolutely crazy that we are bowing down to that. And this is why people are so for Sanders as well. This is why people won't come to the middle of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump is a product of the system that we created and we let perpetuate. And our ending result is going to be Michael Bloomberg, a guy who exploits for-profit prisons for labor, stop and frisk. He was anti-minimum wage. He was transphobic until he decided to run for president. I mean, I guess he cares about gun control, but that's an authoritarian policy no matter how you look at it. So he likes gun control, and he's going to do a little bit about climate, just enough to make people, feel easier about it. It's not about being a billionaire. It's about being able to control the entire system. And it's not about being Bernie or bust. It's about not conceding your values and not conceding the entire political spectrum to, being held hostage by this median voter theorem of a political process where we all try to cram the middle and try to make everyone happy. And it's leading us down this rabbit hole to the right, further and further right. If we go Michael Bloomberg, like I know this is a different conversation, but if we go as far as Michael Bloomberg, you better hope that our worst president of all time is Donald Trump. You better hope nothing worse comes. You better hope Donald Trump Jr. is not ready to run, or Ivanka Trump. You better hope that we're not gonna. I mean, you could say you hate Bernie or bust no matter what. Like you could keep on saying that, but I think they know what they're talking about. I'm not Bernie or bust again, but how can you blame the people that are? And these are just what I have off the top of my head. If you're still here in the video, please consider subscribing, commenting, and liking it. This was kind of just a rant type of thing. I wanted to tackle this issue for a while, and I will more in the future. But we have to understand where we actually stand.